The glass in my office fogged as the line outside the shelter kept growing, a blur of scarves, coats, and hollow eyes bracing against the Ohio wind. Then I saw them. Richard, Judith, and Kyle. My father, my mother, and the brother who once laughed as I was thrown out like garbage. They looked older, thinner, worn down by years they never thought they'd have to survive. They shuffled forward like everyone else, clutching plastic bags and pride that had long since cracked. They didn't recognize me. Not yet. But I recognized everything. The way my father's shoulders hunched when he was ashamed, the way my mother avoided eye contact when she was lying. 9 years ago, my father looked me dead in the eye and said, "You're not worth feeding." Now they were standing in line, waiting for my food. My father always slammed the fridge like it owed him something. Every time he opened it, he'd grunt, stare, then turn to me with that same disgust curling his lip. "You eat like you earn something around here." I was 17, a senior in high school, and every day felt like a countdown I couldn't escape. Our house wasn't a home. It was a war zone wrapped in peeling wallpaper and cold dinners. My dad, Richard Carter, had been laid off 2 years earlier. Since then, his temper filled the space his paycheck used to. My mom, Judith, floated around like a ghost in a cardigan. She made excuses for him. "He's just tired. He's under pressure. Don't start anything." But she never stopped him. Not when he yelled, not when he started locking the fridge at night with a chain. Not when he said what he said next. It was a Thursday. I remember because we had meatloaf, the cheap kind with too much bread and no meat. I asked if I could have seconds. He stared at me like I'd spat in his food. "You're not worth feeding," he said, voice flat. "You're just calories we can't afford." No one flinched. Not my mom. Not Kyle. Kyle, my older brother, the golden boy. Star quarterback. Dad's pride. He looked up from his plate and smirked. "She's more like a parasite, really." I didn't speak. I didn't cry. I just got up, washed my plate, and went to my room. That night, I found the fridge padlocked. The next morning, I went to school, hungry, and came back to find my acceptance letter in the mail, full scholarship to a state university for social work. I thought for a moment, maybe this would change something. Maybe they'd see me. I handed it to my mom first. Her eyes scanned the words, but her face stayed blank. She handed it to my father. He didn't even finish reading it. He ripped it in half. "You think someone like you belongs in college?" he scoffed. "You'd embarrass us." I stood there, frozen, holding pieces of my future. Later that night, I packed a small bag, just enough to last a weekend. I told myself I'd go stay with a friend, just until he calmed down, but Kyle caught me near the front door, told Dad. There wasn't yelling this time, just coldness. Richard opened the door and pointed outside. "You think you're grown? Then go be grown. Go feed yourself." He slammed the door behind me. No jacket, no money, just 3 granola bars and a pair of worn-out shoes. I sat across the street for hours, waiting, watching for the porch light to flick on, for someone to open the door, to say it was a mistake, that I could come back. No one came. By midnight, the house was dark. The porch stayed empty. I walked until the streetlights ran out and the cold bit through my sleeves. I ended up behind a Chinese takeout place, huddled between trash bins and the brick wall. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there and thought. So this is what it feels like to be nothing. They didn't file a missing persons report. They told the neighbors I ran away. At school, they cleaned out my locker the next day, as if I'd never existed. But I did, and I would again. Just not as their daughter, not anymore. I spent the first night under a broken bus stop bench 2 blocks from home. I remember the cold seeping into my spine, the metal biting through my jeans. My stomach was already empty, but the real hunger didn't hit until morning, when I realized no one was coming to look for me. No calls, no police report, no mother crying into a phone. Just silence. I tried going back once, knocked on the door with shaking hands. Kyle opened it, smirked. "Dad says you made your choice." He shut the door in my face. For the next few months, I became a ghost in my own city. I slept behind fast food joints and convenience stores. Ate whatever I could dig from half-full bins. I washed my face in gas station bathrooms and kept my head down so no one would ask questions. Some nights, when it rained, I'd sneak into a 24-hour laundromat and sit next to warm dryers, pretending I belonged there. I learned not to talk, not to hope, not to expect kindness. And then I met Gloria. She was running the Tuesday soup line at a church basement. I had waited 3 hours in the cold for a bowl of something warm. When I got to the front, I accidentally spilled the tray. The plastic clattered, and the food splashed onto my coat. I froze, expecting someone to scream, maybe throw me out. Instead, she knelt down. "You all right, baby?" Her voice was warm, southern. She looked about 60, with silver hair tucked under a scarf and eyes that didn't flinch when they saw me. "When was the last time you ate something hot?" I couldn't answer. I think I just started crying. That night, she gave me a cot in the back of the church and a peanut butter sandwich. No questions, no judgment, just warmth. Over the next few weeks, I helped her clean trays, mop floors, hand out coats. It started small, her showing me how to portion meals, how to keep track of donations. She noticed I was quick with numbers, quiet but observant. She told me I reminded her of her niece who never made it out of Alabama. Gloria became everything. She helped me get my GED, filled out FAFSA forms with me, and taught me how to open a bank account. She even made me sign up for community college classes downtown. Social work. I didn't think I was smart enough. She disagreed. "You've got grit, baby. That's rarer than talent." She wasn't rich, lived in a modest rental behind the church, drove an old Buick that rattled when it turned, but she never let me feel small. For the first time, I had someone who believed in me, not because I was useful, but because I was worth something. When I turned 19, she added my name to her lease, called me her girl, to anyone who asked. She even sewed my name into a Christmas stocking and hung it on the church wall. And then, one morning, I found her on the kitchen floor, stroke. Gone before the ambulance arrived. She'd left behind an envelope with my name on it, handwritten in shaky pen. Inside was a letter, some photos, and a certified document. She'd created a trust from her savings and pension. It wasn't much, but it covered the rest of my degree. In her will, she wrote, "If I ever had a daughter, I'd want her to grow into the woman I see in you." I folded that letter and kept it in my coat pocket for years. Every time I felt like quitting, like crawling back into silence, I held it like a prayer. I didn't just survive those years. I became someone, and I swore that one day I'd build a place where no one would be told they weren't worth feeding. Not on my watch. I walked back through the doors of the same shelter that once turned me away at 17. The paint had chipped, the lighting still buzzed overhead, and the waiting room smelled like instant soup and worn-out shoes. But this time, I wasn't looking for a bed. I was looking for a desk. They hired me as a part-time intake assistant. Nothing fancy, minimum wage, night shifts, endless paperwork. But I didn't care. I was in. I kept my head down and learned everything. How to manage caseloads, navigate county funding, file grant reports. I knew what it felt like to be on the other side of the clipboard. Hungry, humiliated, invisible. That memory never left me. It sharpened me, and slowly I rose. Within 2 years, I became lead caseworker, then shift supervisor, then interim coordinator. Every title was a rung on the ladder I was building from scratch. No connections, no family. To call in favors. Just grit, paperwork, and the ghost of Gloria's voice in my ear. Build it strong, baby. Someone out there will need it. When I turned 25, the board offered me the role of director, the youngest in the shelter's history. I accepted, with one condition. I didn't want press. No TV interviews, no articles. I wasn't doing this to be recognized. I was doing it because no kid should ever sleep behind a gas station. I renovated the intake system, fought for trauma-informed training, added security measures for women escaping violence. I personally fundraised for a children's literacy program in the family wing. They started calling me Miss Elena. Even now, I never used my last name. I signed everything as E. Carter, but kept it quiet. Not because I was ashamed, but because I knew who might be out there, watching. The old version of me, hungry, cold, and scared, would have begged for someone like me. And maybe that's why I did it. Maybe that's why I kept pushing. Then, one afternoon, I opened a partnership request from a suburban outreach group. They wanted to collaborate on food drives. I scrolled down to their address and felt my chest freeze. It was my old church, the same one where my mother led potlucks, where my father once stood tall in a pew. I didn't respond. Just closed the file and walked into the hall. One of our clients, a young boy, maybe 9, ran past me with a plastic tray of chili. He stopped and smiled. "Miss Elena, you made the good cornbread today." I smiled back. I didn't need my past to know who I was. I'd already come back, and this time, I wasn't begging. I was building. The first snow of the season had fallen heavy that morning. We were already over capacity. 3 families to a room, cots lining the hallways, volunteers pulling double shifts. I was reviewing intake reports when Rosa, one of our overnight staff, knocked on my door. "We've got 3 new walk-ins," said they just got evicted. No IDs, no belongings. Nothing unusual. We saw that every week. I told her to process them like anyone else. 10 minutes later, I passed through the lobby on my way to the kitchen, clipboard in hand. That's when I saw them. 3 figures, bundled in worn layers, standing beneath the flickering exit sign. One man, hunched, clinging to a plastic grocery bag filled with what looked like a jacket and some socks. A woman beside him, arms crossed, eyes darting. And a younger man, maybe late 20s, pacing with agitation in his shoulders. My feet stopped cold. Richard, Judith, Kyle, my father, my mother, my brother, standing in the line of the desperate, right here, in the shelter I built. They didn't see me. Not yet. I stepped behind the intake counter and pulled up their forms. Richard Carter, age 61, Judith Carter, 58, Kyle Carter, 28. No income. No housing. No next of kin. No mention of me. I watched from the side window as Rosa handed them water and forms. Richard grumbled about the questions. Judith glanced nervously around. Kyle muttered something under his breath, shaking his head. "They just let anybody run these places now, huh?" He scoffed. "Probably some college girl with a clipboard and no clue." Rosa smiled politely. She had no idea he was talking about me. I stood there, silent, heart hammering in my chest, not out of fear. Out of fury. Out of something colder. Judith reached into her coat and pulled out a worn envelope. She opened it, showing Kyle something inside. I leaned closer. It was a photograph. One I hadn't seen in a decade. Me, at 16. Smiling stiffly, in front of the Christmas tree. Wearing a sweater I'd borrowed from a church donation box. Judith touched the photo like it might disappear. "I miss her," she whispered. Richard didn't respond. He just stared ahead. I stepped back into my office without a word. For 9 years, I'd built a life without them. Brick by brick, scar by scar. Now, here they were, looking for shelter in a place they never imagined I could lead. The irony wasn't lost on me. They had no idea whose roof they stood under, but they would, soon. I called them into my office just after lunch. Standard intake procedure. That's what I told the staff. But this wasn't standard. Not for me. They shuffled in slowly. Richard first, eyes scanning the room like he was expecting someone to call him out. Judith followed, clutching that same plastic bag like it held more than just socks and shame. Kyle dragged his feet, arms crossed, jaw tight. They sat across from me without a flicker of recognition. I didn't speak at first. I just let the silence stretch. Richard broke it. "We filled out everything. Don't know why we're being called back in." His tone was clipped, defensive, the kind he used when he knew he wasn't in control. I didn't look up right away. I let them sit with their discomfort. Then I raised my eyes, met his, and said, "Do you still believe some people aren't worth feeding?" Silence. Judith blinked. Kyle squinted, like my voice was a melody he half remembered. Richard frowned. "What?" "That's what you told me," I said, calm, clear. 9 years ago, right before you locked the fridge, right before you threw me out of the house with nothing but a backpack and $3. Judith's face went pale. Kyle's mouth parted, and Richard, his eyes widened just slightly, just enough. "Elena?" he whispered. I nodded once. He slumped back in the chair like someone had knocked the wind out of him. Judith covered her mouth. "No, you can't." Kyle stood up suddenly. "This is a joke, right?" "No joke," I said, rising slowly. "I'm the director of this shelter. I rebuilt my life in the very city you left me to rot in. And now, here you are, asking for the help you swore I didn't deserve." Richard tried to stand, but his knees buckled and he sat again, heavier this time. We didn't know what we were doing, Judith said quickly. We were under pressure. Your dad had just lost his job, and Kyle— Don't, I cut in. Don't blame money or stress. You didn't just forget me. You erased me. You told neighbors I ran away. You told the school I was unstable. You never filed a missing person report because I wasn't missing. I was discarded. Kyle scoffed. You always were dramatic. I turned to him. No, Kyle. I was starving, sleeping behind dumpsters, begging for warmth. That's not drama. That's survival. Richard's voice cracked. I think about that night every time I go to bed hungry, he murmured. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't enough. I looked at all three of them, my voice steady, my heart strangely still. You will be given beds in the general housing wing, meals like everyone else. Case management if you qualify, but there are no special favors here, no family ties to pull, not anymore. Judith's eyes welled up. Elena, please. You made your choices, I said softly. And I made mine. I built something real, something you said I wasn't capable of. Now you're here, and I'm the one holding the keys. Kyle stormed out, muttering something under his breath. Richard sat, shoulders crumpled, like all the fight had gone out of him. Judith just stared at me, eyes pleading, but I didn't bend. I opened the door and called in Rosa. Please take them to dorm assignments. Richard in men's wing, Judith and Kyle in family 3. I didn't say goodbye. As they were led out, I sat back down. Looked at the intake forms still on my desk. Carter, Richard, Carter, Judith, Carter, Kyle. I picked up a pen and scratched one line beneath them. No special conditions. Proceed as normal. Then I closed the file. Some stories need an ending. This one just needed a door to close. Later that night, I walked the halls of the shelter as the snow piled quietly outside. The heaters hummed low. Somewhere, someone was laughing. Soft, tired, but real. In the family wing, a little girl handed me a crayon drawing. It was me, in a big red coat, with a golden crown and a tray of food. You're the shelter queen, she whispered. I smiled. I passed the dorm where my mother and brother now slept. Walked by the men's wing where Richard was assigned a bunk. I didn't stop. I didn't look in. They were just names on a chart now. Just another case file. In my office, I lit the candle Gloria used to keep by the window. Her letter sat in a frame on my desk, worn but steady. I looked around, at the warmth, the quiet dignity we'd built here. And I breathed. Turns out, I whispered, I was worth feeding. I turned off the light and locked the door behind me.